What's going on, everybody? Ronnie DiMaggio here, product specialist at BMW of Morristown, and in today's video we are going to be talking about this 2023 BMW Alpina XB7. So as we know, for 2023 the entire X7 lineup got a refresh, an LCI life cycle impulse. So that brought us the split headlight design, iDrive 8, some option changes, things like that, just a general mid-life cycle refresh for the X7, and of course those changes also apply to the range-topping Alpina XB7 version of the X7. So in this video we're going to go over all the styling changes that are unique to the XB7. There are many. We're going to go over the interior, the powertrain, all the details related to the Alpina XB7, which, as I've gotten familiar with this car, saw it in our showroom, took some pictures of it, looked around it, I am really impressed with this car. This might be the one. If I could have any BMW, it might be one of these. That's how impressed I am with the XB7. But before we get into the powertrain, the styling, stuff like that, for those of you that may not know, I just kind of want to introduce Alpina if you're not super familiar with it already. Alpina is a BMW tuner, but they are in partnership with BMW, and now just recently BMW actually bought Alpina. They own the company Alpina now. And Alpina is basically the Ultra GT version of various BMW models. In the United States, we only get the Alpina XB7 currently. We used to get the 7 Series. Over in Europe, there are Alpina versions of pretty much every model in the BMW range, but Alpinas are somewhere between M, so they're super powerful, which we'll talk about, and, you know, ultra luxury. So they have the straight line kind of power of M cars, but they have softer suspensions, more geared towards grand touring cars. So they're sort of like ultimate GT cars, and that is what the XB7 is here. And we'll tell you why it fits that description in just a second. But let's get started with what's under the hood. Alright, so under the hood of the XB7 is the 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8 called the S68. So one of the big changes for the 23 X7, the LCI version of the X7, was the entire range of powertrains got updated. So the B58, the xDrive 40 got updated, the M50 turned into the M60, the N63 was replaced by the S68, and that change is true here for the Alpina. So this is an S68 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8. It makes a massive 630 horsepower, 590 pound-feet of torque. This car weighs 6,000 pounds, and I'll give you a second to guess what the 0 to 60 time is. Go ahead. 630 horsepower, 6,000 pounds. What do you think? Probably not as high as you were thinking. It's 3.9 seconds for a 6,000 pound SUV, which is really incredible that BMW and Alpina in conjunction have been able to design a powertrain, an engine and a transmission and an all-wheel drive system that is capable of taking a 6,000 pound vehicle to 60 miles an hour in 3.9 seconds. That is an incredible feat of engineering, physics-defying sort of stuff. Really impressive. Top speed is allegedly 180 miles an hour. I say allegedly because it's electronically limited. But 180 miles an hour, the speedometer goes up to 210, so a lot of cars have 200 on the dash, as people say. The Alpina has 210 on the dash, which is way cooler than 200. So really impressive powertrain, really impressive numbers to back up the powertrain, paired exclusively, of course, to an automatic transmission and all-wheel drive. But that's the engine. Alpina does go through the engine and the transmission to make it more suitable for the GT aspirations of the Alpina, so they don't just take the S68 out of the M60 version of the X7, drop it in here and call it a day. They take the engine, but they rework the tuning, the software. I believe there are some hardware changes. I know there are hardware changes for the transmission. It's reinforced to handle the additional power of the Alpina spec S68. But that's the engine. Let's close the hood up and talk about the front end styling. All right, so let's talk about front end styling on the XB7. This is one of the biggest areas of change compared to the regular X7. There's change everywhere, but it's super noticeable in the front, mainly because, as you see on the lower portion of the bumper there, Alpina adds on a bespoke front splitter with the Alpina lettering prominently displayed there in white in the front splitter. So to get an Alpina XB7, you take an X7 M60's front end, and instead of on the M60, this is black plastic, no matter what color you get. On the Alpina, this section here is always paint matched. So this is actually Black Sapphire Metallic rather than just plain black plastic. If you got a white Alpina or any other color, this would match body color, as would, you know, this piece in here. All of this, the front splitter, it would all be body color. It is all body color, as opposed to X7 M60s where it's just black plastic no matter what color you get. So that's the big change for the Alpina. It's that lower bumper portion with the front splitter, which really helps to bring the car lower to the ground. The Alpina has adjustable air suspension, and you can really just slam it to the ground with the adjustable air suspension. It's awesome, and it looks really cool when it's low. But that lower splitter adds to the sort of ground effects, and it just gives it a lower, more menacing looking front end. Other than that, still have satin silver grills, still have the split headlights, same old BMW roundel that you would expect. And the front end is really just, the changes are mostly dominated by that front splitter, which looks really nice. So that's the front end of the Alpina. Let's go around to the side of the car and check out what's going on over there. All right, so along the side of the XB7, first thing you'll notice is we have it on its lowest setting for the air suspension now, and it's about 1 finger of wheel gap between the tire and the fender for a stock car, a stock SUV's air suspension. Really, really cool that they let you lower it down that much, and it looks really awesome, nice and low like that. So on the side, what's specific to the Alpina? Really just the wheels and the brakes. So these are the smaller wheels. You can either get 23s, the Alpina Classics, or these sort of split 5 spokes. These are 21s, 285, 45, 21 square. One thing to note, center caps are Alpina logos rather than BMW roundels, and the brake caliper is blue, but it says Alpina rather than M or BMW, which is pretty cool to see. A nice little Alpina specific touch. As we come along the side of the car, again, this piece here is still black plastic instead of painted Black Sapphire Metallic. That will not be body color on other Alpinas, like a white car or something. But as you come along to the side of the car, it's pretty standard X7 M60 looking stuff. No winged mirrors or anything like that, but black trim around the windows, and you have your black roof rails as well, and the super prominent Hofmeister kink. That's all X7s, but I always point it out because I love the way it looks. Rear wheels also a 21, 285, 45, 21 in the back as well, with your blue painted caliper. So not a ton going on the side of the car. Really good looking side profile, especially when it's nice and low like this, but not a ton to point out as far as differences compared to the M60. So let's move around to the back. All right, so around back of the Alpina XB7, another big change to note, like the front splitter on the front side of the car, the rear end, that lower portion, is substantially different compared to an M60. We have quad exhaust, 2 on each outlet, and a unique diffuser and lower bumper portion in order to accommodate the quad exhaust. One thing I really like about this quad exhaust compared to the quad exhaust on like M cars, X5M, M5, M3, all the M cars, this quad exhaust actually has a piece of trim below the exhaust, so it sort of looks like it's coming out of the bumper rather than out from underneath the bumper, which is a super cool look. I really like that they took that little extra step to surround the exhaust completely. You have a nice chrome strip along the back connecting the 2 taillights, and then you have Alpina on the left, XB7 on the right, chrome badges. Otherwise, again, not a ton to point out here. Alpinas are all about being subtle, super fast, super composed at high speeds, kind of Autobahn cruising sort of cars. And the styling is always very subtle with Alpinas, but it's very imposing, very substantial looking without being flashy. That's the goal of Alpina as far as styling goes, and I think they hit a home run as we wrap up the styling section of the video with that goal in the XB7. We have that relatively subtle front spoiler, pretty much unchanged side profile, some classy wheels. There's never any crazy juts or cuts or spikes in the wheels with Alpinas. If you know Alpina, you know the Alpina Classic wheel is just a super plain spoke design. There's a lot of spokes, so it looks really cool, but never anything too flashy with the wheels, never anything too flashy with the bumpers. Quad exhaust kind of lets you know this isn't a normal X7, but nothing crazy. That's the deal with Alpina. Subtle, but still menacing and muscular. So styling is awesome. Let's go ahead and take a look at the practicality, starting with the trunk, and then we'll move into the back seats as well. All right, so as far as cargo space in the XB7, of course, this is unchanged compared to a regular X7. It is just an X7 as far as space goes, but that is to say, really good cargo space. You can see we have our full cargo, the cargo cover for when the third row is up here. I can fit this into the cargo area lengthwise and still close up this tailgate, so plenty of space in the back of the XB7. Of course, you do have a third row. We've done a video on multiple X7s already. We'll link to those right here if you want to check out the third row space where we actually climb into the third row, show you what it's like back there. But heated third row seats, independent climate control for the third row. So really nice place to be, even in the very back, and plenty of cargo space in the trunk as well. But let's go ahead and close this up. Obviously, it's one touch everywhere to close up the trunk, and we'll hop in the back seat and go over the space and amenities in the second row. All right, so second row back seat in the Alpina XB7. Again, standard X7 stuff back here. No bigger or smaller than a regular X7. The leather is a little bit different. This is ivory white over Atlas gray. You probably won't see this on a regular X7. Looks really nice. But anyway, back seat space is really, really plentiful. Plenty of knee room. This is where I would sit as a driver at about 5'9", so I can sit behind myself with plenty of foot room, plenty of knee and leg room, headroom, not a problem at all. I have, 5 inches of headroom, so really nice place to be. I have 4 USB-Cs in the back here, 2 in the back of each seat and 2 in the center console. I have heated seats back here. I have my own climate zone, as well as a fold-down center armrest with cup holders. So really nice place to be in the back of the XB7. Some unique things, you have some quilted leather. You can actually get this on a regular X7 as well, but it looks super nice in this ivory white. Adds to the kind of upscale feel of the interior. But really nice place to be as far as comfort and space goes. But that's the back seat practicality. Let's go ahead and hop up front, where there are actually a lot of really cool Alpina specific details for the XB7. Let's start talking about some of those. All right, so here we are inside the front seat of the XB7. So like I said, we've already done videos on the X7 M60, regular X7, pre-LCI X7, done a bunch of X7s. So go ahead and check those videos out if you want to see the X7 general stuff, how the space and the infotainment and stuff is. In this video, I just want to focus on the Alpina specific stuff because there's enough of it that it'll, fill in the time of our full interior portion. So we'll kind of just go left to right, start with getting into the car. You have Alpina specific kick plates rather than M or BMW or something like that. It says Alpina on the door sill, which looks super nice. In that same area, you have Alpina specific floor mats that are trimmed in the color of the interior of the car. In this case, that's ivory white. And you have the little Alpina emblem on the floor mats, a little sort of insignia right there, a hard piece in the floor mat, which looks super cool. One thing we'll just mention about the interior of this car, it's obviously full merino leather. That's true of all Alpina models. So you have some touches of ivory white on the dashboard, as well as some Atlas gray on the lower portions, split leather on the door with some nice silver and gray contrast stitching. Looks really cool. But some more Alpina specific stuff. The steering wheel is of course unique to the Alpina. The shape, the actual physical steering wheel is not, but the emblem in the steering wheel is Alpina specific. Obviously that's the Alpina logo. And then something that I love that Alpina does is there's Alpina's colors are sort of blue and green, and the lower portion of the steering wheel has green contrast stitching. The upper part of the steering wheel has blue contrast stitching. That's why Alpinas are always offered in that kind of signature Alpina green or Alpina blue. That's these two colors right here. Interestingly, the actual logo is red and blue, but their kind of signature colors are green and blue. So red, green, and blue, those are the Alpina colors. And then in the Alpina logo, I always thought this was cool. You have a crankshaft in the logo, and then what looks to me like some velocity stacks, an exhaust part or something. If you know what's in the red section of the Alpina logo, let me know in the comments below, because I haven't quite figured it out. But anyway, really nice looking logo there on the steering wheel. Another thing that is specific to Alpina, and this has been true of Alpinas for a long time, they always have blue-faced gauges. So I was a little worried when BMW went to totally digital displays that they would get rid of that with the Alpinas, but thankfully they didn't with iDrive 7, and they still haven't with iDrive 8. And frankly, I think the iDrive 8 Alpina gauges are some of my favorite Alpina gauges ever. They are still blue, and with iDrive 8, obviously we know we can change the layout of the gauges. So the first two layouts are your close and then far apart tachometers. And then the last one is just the standard BMW vertical speedometer. But you have your different options, and then in certain modes the RPM gauge is blue and green, and in others it's blue and red. And then you have this really cool retro sort of font, and you have Alpina in huge font. You have Alpina written out as big as you have the speed written out in the gauge cluster, so you will never forget what kind of car you're driving when you're behind the wheel of the XB7. Just a really cool, fun, unique gauge cluster for the Alpina, which I think is really, really cool. Moving along to the middle sort of area, the iDrive 8 screen is the same as a regular X7. One thing that I thought was interesting is that the default for this screen, or maybe this is just how it was set up, but I noticed that the off-road view was in here by default. Maybe somebody changed that, or maybe Alpina ships them that way. Either way, you still have your standard iDrive 8 screen, and the car that's displayed in the screen is, of course, an XB7 in the correct color. BMW does that with all cars, but it's especially cool when it's an XB7 up there. More Alpina-specific stuff. You have the BMW Alpina XB7 with the Alpina logo here, a little plaque in the center area that covers your cup holders and your wireless charging tray. So that's really nice to see. The iDrive knob is also Alpina specific, so it has the Alpina logo printed over top of the glass iDrive knob. One thing to mention with Alpinas, pretty much everything is standard equipment. The only options on this car, I believe, are trailer hitch and Bowers and Wilkins. Obviously color, and you can choose your color, but I think there's a couple other options, but those are the two big ones. There's really not a lot to option on the Alpina. Everything's standard, so Harman Kardon, executive, massaging seats, heated and cooled cup holders, all that stuff that's optional on the regular X7 is standard on the Alpina. That's kind of part of Alpina. It's an ultra GT luxury cruiser, so obviously all of that luxury stuff is going to be standard. So we went through the Alpina specific things pretty quickly. That's not to say that there's not a lot of them. It's just a lot of little things that all come together to create a very unique Alpina specific feel while you're driving the car. It definitely feels more special, more unique to be sitting in an Alpina than it does a regular X7 or even an X7 M60. You have the Alpina logo right in the steering wheel, that huge, awesome Alpina font in the gauge cluster, the Alpina stitching, you know, all that little stuff we talked about comes together. Those little things come together to create one cohesive and, you know, decidedly unique and different feeling interior in the best way possible. Feels awesome to sit in this car. The interior is really fantastic. So top marks for the Alpina XB7 in the interior. Let's finish up in here. We'll hop outside and we'll wrap up the video with our final thoughts. All right, so that is going to do it for our walk around and overview of the 2023 BMW Alpina XB7. Overall, my impression of this car is extremely positive. I have really taken a liking to the Alpina XB7. This is the first LCI version of the XB7 that we've gotten, so it was my first chance to check it out and kind of spend some time with it in person, really get a good look at it, and it is really, really impressive. Looks-wise, it looks incredible. It sounds really good, as you guys heard. Just sort of the ethos of Alpina, an ultra-luxury sort of Autobahn cruiser, you know, cruise at 180 miles an hour down the Autobahn all day in extreme comfort in a big SUV. Just a really, really cool thought for a car, and the execution really came through very well with the XB7. But that's going to do it for this one. Please drop a like on the video if you liked the video, and subscribe to the channel if you think we deserved it. Any questions or comments about the XB7 or anything else in BMW world, anything BMW related, drop those down in a comment below. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at BMW Morristown. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you guys in the next one.